If one off meal sends your gut into a 3-day tailspin, this video is for you. You know the pattern. You're careful all week, you're eating safe foods on the weekdays, you're feeling relatively okay, and then you have one dinner out, one stressful work event, one meal that's not perfectly on plan, and suddenly you're bloated for 3 days or constipated for the next week. You're right back to square one, and it feels like your gut's being held together by duct tape. And even the slightest deviation makes everything fall apart. I'm going to explain exactly why this happens and, more importantly, how to fix it so your gut can handle real life again. Hey everyone, I'm Erin Harner, integrative registered dietitian nutritionist, and I help women who are struggling with chronic constipation, bloating, and IBS build sustainable gut health that works for them in the real world, not just in theory. What I'm about to share with you today is one of the most important concepts I teach, the difference between a fragile gut and a resilient gut. Because if your gut falls apart after one wrong move, it's not that you ate the wrong thing, it's that your gut has become too fragile. And before we dive in, if you want to understand where your gut needs support, I have a free gut clarity quiz linked below in the description. It takes about 3 minutes and will give you some personalized insights and next best steps for you. Now let's talk about the fragility problem. This is what happens when your gut falls apart after one meal. Most women I work with describe their gut like this. It feels unpredictable. One day certain foods are fine, and the next day they cause massive bloating or they cause constipation. If they travel, all bets are off. Everything is thrown off for the week of the travel and then another week afterwards. A stressful day at work leads to abdominal pain, bloating, and constipation that continues for days afterwards. And the instinct when this happens is to tighten up, to get more restrictive, more careful, more controlled. If I just follow the rules perfectly, my gut's gonna be okay, right? Not so much. Here's the problem. Restriction creates fragility. It doesn't lead to resilience. Think about it like this. If you wanted to build physical strength, right? You want to build your muscles. Would you avoid ever lifting anything heavy? Probably not, right? Would you create a life where you never have to carry groceries, never have to move furniture, never have to exert yourself? Probably not. Why? Because your muscles would get weaker, not stronger. Your gut actually works the same way. When you restrict more and more, you're actually creating an environment where your gut never has to adapt or handle variety. You're never making it stronger. You're making it more fragile. And a fragile gut is one that breaks more easily under stress. Let me be super specific for a second about what I mean by fragile. A fragile gut has low microbial diversity. You might have some beneficial bacteria, but not much variety. Think of it like a garden. We want a lush, vibrant, rich garden full of vegetables and flowers, and all sorts of pollinators are drawn to the garden. We don't want a desert for a garden, and that's what I see in so many of my clients and patients. If your gut has low microbial diversity, you might have some beneficial bacteria, but not much variety. So when one species struggles, maybe due to stress or antibiotics, there's no backup. The whole system just collapses and all bets are off. You have the symptoms to prove it. A fragile gut often has compromised barrier integrity, also known as leaky gut. Your gut lining is supposed to be like a selective filter, like a coffee filter that lets nutrients in while keeping toxins and undigested food particles out, right? We don't want grounds in our coffee. But when that gut barrier is compromised, things that shouldn't get through do. And this triggers inflammation and immune reactions and all sorts of other problems downstream. A fragile gut also has no functional redundancy. I know that's a funny word, but this is basically a fancy way of saying that there's no backup system. There's no backup plan. In a healthy gut, multiple species of bacteria actually perform very similar functions. So if one goes down, others can step in. In a fragile gut, there's no plan B. There's no backup plan. One thing can just take the whole thing down. This is why one meal, one stressful day, one deviation can send everything spiraling and you feeling like garbage. So what does a resilient gut actually look like? Let me paint you a picture. A resilient gut can handle a stressful week at work without constipation setting in for days. A resilient gut can go to a wedding, eat foods you wouldn't normally eat, and recover by the next day instead of being bloated for a week. A resilient gut can travel across time zones and adapt without your digestion completely shutting down. That's resilience. It's not perfection. It's not never having symptoms, but it's the ability to adapt, to recalibrate and maintain the core functions of the gut, even when life throws us curveballs, because we know it will. So let's talk about 5 different things that create resilience in the gut. First, high microbial diversity. Basically, this means having a lot of different species of bacteria, not just 1 or 2 strains from a probiotic. Because the cool thing is, the more diversity you have, the more stable your system is. Diversity leads to a more functional gut. It's like having a diverse investment portfolio versus just putting all your money in one stock or one company. The second thing that's really important here is an intact gut barrier. Your gut lining needs to be strong enough to actually do its job as a selective filter. Remember that coffee filter? We don't want grounds in our coffee. The grounds need to stay above and the good stuff needs to drip down into the coffee. In order to have an intact gut barrier, we need to have adequate nutrients, things like zinc and vitamin A and glutamine. We need to limit inflammation and create proper mucus production by certain bacteria and the mucin layer in our gut. Third, we want functional redundancy. This means multiple species of bacteria that can actually perform very similar jobs. If one goes down, others can step up. This is why diversity is so important. It allows your gut to function and for you to feel good even when certain bugs go up and down. It's your backup system. Fourth, we have the presence of keystone species. These are specific bacteria that have really big influences on your entire gut ecosystem. Think of these keystone bacteria species as like the foundation of a house. When they're present and thriving, everything works better. The foundation is sturdy for everything else to build on top of. And fifth, we want sufficient short-chain fatty acid production. These are compounds that your gut actually produces when they digest certain fibers. These short-chain fatty acids are the fuel for your gut lining cells, also known as colonocytes. And they have really powerful anti-inflammatory effects in the gut and throughout the body. When all of these pieces are in place, you have a gut that can handle life's curveballs. It can bend without breaking. It's resilient. Now let's talk for a second about why restriction is an approach that so many women are stuck in that actually makes things worse. And when you eat the same 5 to 10 foods on repeat because they're safe, this actually creates more problems than it often is helpful. When you have a very similar diet day to day with very little diversity, what happens is you feed the same species of bacteria over and over again. These ones thrive on those specific foods, and the ones that need different types of fiber, different types of polyphenols, different nutrients start to die off or go dormant. In this case, your microbial diversity plummets. And that garden, you have something that looks more like a desert bed full of weeds instead of a lush, robust garden full of vegetables and carrots and beets and turnips and radishes and all the things, as well as some calendula and marigolds and other flowers. That's what we're wanting, diversity. When we reduce the diversity in our diet and limit it to just a handful of safe foods or a number of safe foods that we rotate and rotate and rotate through breakfast, lunch, and dinner for weeks and months at a time, what this does is you might temporarily feel better. And this is the hard part because you're avoiding foods that are triggering the symptoms. But you're not healing. You're actually creating an increasingly fragile system that can't handle anything outside of your narrow safe zone. It's like living in a temperature-controlled bubble or a room that has a thermostat set to 70 degrees Fahrenheit every single day year round. You never experience any changes. Sure, you're comfortable, but the second you step outside, you can't handle it. It's too cold or too hot. I see this pattern constantly in my practice. A woman will come to me eating maybe 8 foods, 10 foods, 20 foods on rotation, and she's terrified to try anything new because the last time she did, she was miserable for days. And I get it. The fear is real. The symptoms are totally real. But staying in that restricted place forever isn't healing, it's just survival. True healing means gradually expanding what your gut can tolerate while supporting the underlying systems that create resilience. So let me give you some concrete examples of what this might look like in real life. A fragile gut is 1 glass of wine at a wedding, 3 days of bloating and digestive distress. Whereas a resilient gut, 1 glass of wine at a wedding, maybe a little bloating the next morning that resolves by afternoon and you carry on with your life. A fragile gut means you're traveling across time zones and that leads to constipation for 2 weeks, even when you're eating the exact same diet you would at home and super carefully. A resilient gut means you can travel across time zones. You might have a few days of adjustment until your gut normalizes, and then it normalizes. Normal function returns. A fragile gut might mean you have a super stressful work deadline and your gut just shuts down. Symptoms flare for days after the stress passes. Whereas a resilient gut, you have that same stressful work deadline and you might have some mild symptoms during that peak stress, but it resolves quickly once everything calms down and you let your nervous system calm down. A fragile gut might mean eating in a restaurant and you have tons of anxiety and you scrutinize the menu and you're still off for days afterwards, not feeling well. A resilient gut might mean eating at that same restaurant, making reasonable food choices, and feeling totally fine the next day. You see the difference here? It's not about never having symptoms. It's about how quickly your system can adapt and recover and adapt to the changes that you're throwing at it. So how do we actually build resilience if your gut is currently fragile? First, we want to start with strategic diversity. This doesn't mean throwing everything at your gut at once. It means gradually, systematically expanding the variety of foods that you eat, especially those plant foods that are super colorful. There's a concept in gut health research that a lot of people call like 30 plants per week. The idea is that eating 30 different plant foods in a week, this includes things like vegetables and fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices, can dramatically increase microbial diversity in your gut. You don't have to hit 30 foods right away, but the goal is expansion, not restriction. So start where you are. If you're at 8 foods, can you get to 12? And then 15. Each new plant food you tolerate is feeding different species of bacteria that are building diversity in your gut microbiome. Second, we want to make sure we support the gut barrier. This means adequate protein to help support tissue repair. Key nutrients in the diet, things like zinc and vitamin A, omega-3 fatty acids to reduce inflammation, and specific compounds like L-glutamine that support gut lining cells. By the way, you can get these all from food. Third, we want to really work on establishing rhythm without rigidity. Your gut runs on biological clocks. Eating at roughly consistent times each day helps your body prepare for digestion. But this doesn't mean eating exactly at 7 a.m. every morning or exactly 6 p.m. every evening for dinner. It means having predictable windows that your body can learn to trust. Fourth, we want to support keystone species. There are certain probiotic strains and specific fibers that will help support the bacteria that have the biggest impact on the overall gut ecosystem. Fifth, if you've eliminated a ton of foods from your diet, we want to slowly, gradually reintroduce those foods that you've eliminated. This is where most people get stuck. They know they should expand their diet, but they're terrified of symptoms coming back. The key is doing this systematically, not randomly, starting with foods that are less likely to cause reactions, introducing one at a time, and giving your body time to adapt. The biggest mistake I see here is going too fast and rushing it and feeling awful. And something that's really important to remember here too is that some temporary symptoms during reintroduction are normal. They don't mean failure. They mean your gut is adapting. And as long as symptoms resolve within a day or two and you're seeing overall progress, your body is building resilience. Your gut is becoming stronger. It's like going to the gym and building muscle. It takes time, but the more you do it and the longer you stick to it, the better and the stronger you're going to get. So let me tell you about one of my clients. She came to me after struggling with constipation and bloating for well over 20 years. She was diagnosed with IBS and just couldn't figure out what was going on or how to fix it. She had literally tried everything she could think of. Elimination diets, probiotics, fiber supplements, laxatives. She'd been to a gastroenterologist, her primary care doctor, and multiple specialists. And here's what kept happening. Temporary relief, then right back to square one. When she started working with me, she was eating a pretty limited diet and she was terrified of new foods or going out to restaurants. Travel was like off the table, out of the question. She just refused to travel and she insisted upon staying. This was because her gut was incredibly fragile. When I worked with her, we really focused on building resilience, not restricting more, not finding more foods to eliminate, but systematically expanding her capacity while supporting her gut barrier, increasing diversity, and reestablishing rhythm. This was the key to her success. It took time. It took months. This was not an overnight transformation. But she recently told me, even during stressful events in my life, this program helped me keep my symptoms mild, if at all. That was a big deal for a woman who'd been struggling with chronic constipation and IBS for well over 20 years. That's resilience. Her gut can now handle stress. It can adapt. It doesn't fall apart at the first sign of travel or a time zone change or going out to dinner with her friends. And that's what we're building toward. So if you feel like your gut's being held together by duct tape, if one wrong meal sends you into a tailspin, and if you're tired of living in fear of your own body, you don't need more restriction. You need to build resilience, my friend. And that starts with understanding where your gut is fragile and what specific supports it needs. I've created a free gut clarity quiz that will help you guide your gut patterns and what's keeping you stuck. It takes about 3 minutes and you'll get personalized insights based on your answers. I've linked that below in the description. And if you want to go deeper into understanding gut rhythm and the mistakes that keep most women I work with stuck, I have a free training called Still Bloated and Backed Up, the 3 Gut Rhythm Mistakes, Draining Your Energy and Confidence. That link is also in the description. Your gut doesn't have to be this fragile forever. Resilience is buildable. You just need the right approach. And if this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more gut health content that goes beyond typical, like, eat this, not that advice. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.